Welcome to Ask a Coroner, inside the coroner's office, the podcast where we answer the questions people have always wanted to ask about death investigations. I'm Mark Hammond, Boyd County Coroner.
I'm Bailey Rucker. I'm a deputy coroner.
For many years, I've worked in death investigations, and one thing I've learned is that people naturally are curious about what we do, and they want to know exactly what happens at the coroner's office. In this podcast, we'll answer real questions from the public and talk about how death investigations really work.
Mark's been my mentor for many years, probably more years than he's wanted to be, but he's also responsible for probably 95% of my knowledge. So if you're wanting to get educated, this is definitely the place to be. And I think probably a question that you get asked the most is what comes with your coroner title.
And that's the biggest question, because people truly they don't know. Mm-hmm. And when they look at that, a coroner is somebody that is elected in Kentucky, and in different states it can be elected. Mm-hmm. And in turn, once you're elected, then you're responsible for making sure that death certificates get signed out. You determine the cause and manner of death, and a lot of people think doctors do that, and really that's not true. It's a myth. Mm-hmm. We work with police, other law enforcement. The coroner is considered law enforcement in Kentucky and a lot of other states. We have peace officer powers, just like anybody else, to collect evidence. We testify in court a lot. We work with the fire departments. We work with EMS a lot. EMS is usually there, and law enforcement is there before we arrive. Mm-hmm. So all those things kind of fall into place.
So with your, as an elected official, you do a 4-year term?
That is correct. We do 4 years in Kentucky, and then you have to rerun again for election if you want to keep that term.
Okay. So deaths can occur under many different circumstances. What do you think you see most, and then what are those other circumstances that happen?
So most of our deaths are actually natural deaths. Natural deaths that occur at home. They're sudden. And then also any death that is in an ER, we handle those too. Those are sudden deaths that are worked in the hospital a lot of times. And in ERs, those are covered by us. We do a lot of scene deaths. So we go to the scenes to handle any suspicious death, anything that happens suddenly. We also handle any suicides, any homicides, and accidental deaths come to play in there. A lot of times it's car wrecks. It could be some type of vehicle accident. It could be an overdose. We do a lot of those deaths like that. And so those take a full investigation when we do those.
So aside from the investigations, I'm sure you have a lot of deaths in the hospitals and stuff like that. How do those calls differentiate from scene work?
So anything that is not a natural death, we have to take under our jurisdiction. So somebody comes in and they have overdosed and they make it through the ER, they go upstairs, and 2 or 3 days later they die because of, say, brain anoxia. In other words, they didn't have a lot of oxygen going to their brain. Mm-hmm. And that death now, a regular doctor won't sign that out. In other words, it gets kicked to the coroner's office, to where we would come in, we would review medical records, we would collect blood samples that came in during admission, which are really important to us. They're like a golden ticket when it comes to working a case backwards.
So admission, like when they're going into the hospital,
that is
go
correct.
Ahead and take that sample.
Yeah, so we get those. So the ER, when somebody comes into the emergency room, most of the time, 99.9% of the time, blood's taken. And so we can get that, and we use that blood because that blood is the best sample we can get. It's kind of like if all of our cases, we average about 98% of the time we do toxicology. Toxicology is a tool. Mm-hmm. So when we do the toxicology, that consists of drawing blood, drawing urine, and drawing vitreous. And when all three of those will give us the answers we need a lot of times if any drugs are in the system.
What is vitreous?
Vitreous is actually drawing fluids from the eyes.
Okay.
And that tells us specifically like alcohol levels. It tells us It can give electrolyte levels. It can give both of those, and those can be really important when it comes to trying to determine somebody's manner of death or their cause of death when it comes to that.
Another thing is determining the cause and manner of death. So you have the naturals, the accidents, that kind of stuff. What happens from your perspective when you're determining and signing out these deaths?
So a lot of people have a myth of, we go in and we say, oh, they're dead, and we call the funeral home, and the funeral home comes and picks somebody up. In our office, we do have a morgue, and we have a workable morgue that we bring the bodies back to us. The reason we do that is we have a lot better light back there. So that everybody gets at what's called a postmortem examination, which is an external examination. We take the body, we cut off all the clothes are cut off, and they're put into bio bags, bio waste, because anything that is like that, number one, we don't stick our hands in pockets or anything like that. We're afraid of getting stuck with needles, different things. So all that gets cut. And then we take pictures. Anybody that has tattoos, we make sure that we take those. Any distinguishing marks. We do any type of scars that they have that may be important to us. Any injuries, all those come into play, and then we do the toxicology. And so we do all that, and we put all that together into the case file. We also include medical records. Medical records become really important to us, especially their last visits, and that tells us a lot of times their medical history, things like that. And then we have to wait. It's a waiting game. Toxicology in this state, in Kentucky, we can usually get toxicology back in 2 to 3 weeks, to where other states, it may be months before you get that toxicology back. So we get the toxicology back, we make sure nothing is in the system that would have contributed to their death. Then we're able to actually sign that death certificate out and get it back to the funeral homes, to where the funeral homes will distribute those death certificates to the families. A lot of people think I can sign a death certificate today and they get it tomorrow.
And hand it straight out to them.
Yeah, and that's not true, because once it's signed, it's electronically sent to Vital Statistics in Kentucky. Vital Statistics looks over it, makes sure there's no misspellings, making sure that everything's readable on there, and then they will stamp it with a number. And every death certificate has a specific number in Kentucky. So once that's stamped, then it goes to the funeral homes. The problem is it has to be snail mailed over there. So it's regular mail, and everybody knows that it takes a long time to get regular mail if you're waiting for something. And once that comes, then they will distribute those to the family, so they can do anything they need to do with the death certificates.
So, back to responding to different death scenes. Do you get called out for that? Do you have a heads up what you're going into? How does that kind of work out?
The 911 center gets the call. So the call comes in to 911. From there, what usually happens is they will dispatch law enforcement, a lot of times law enforcement, fire department, and EMS to the scene. Once they get there and paramedics declare somebody deceased, then 911 will in turn call me or call whoever's on call, and they will say, hey, you have a death. What's interesting in Boyd County, that we review about 1,200 deaths a year. So whether it's our case or not, facilities such as hospice houses, such as nursing homes, all that sends us a natural death form. Anybody that dies in the hospital that we do not take that case, in turn, they send a natural death form. It's like you were on call last night. You got woke up at what?
Like 2 o'clock in the morning.
2 o'clock in the morning,
Yep.
and it's like boom. And it was because somebody had been in the hospital less than 24 hours. They run that case by you, and then you were able to release that body. So we review all those to make sure that nothing falls into our jurisdiction, such as somebody that falls and breaks a hip would be a classic example of that. They fall, they break a hip, they have surgery, they end up in the hospital, and they have a blood clot, and the blood clot kills them. that now is considered an accident instead of a natural death. Because what really started that death was them breaking their hip. And then the blood clot was what killed them.
And that's how you're talking about working a case backwards, going up to the actual starting point to get your actual answer.
Exactly. You have to have all those answers. If we can't get all those answers, then that case gets sent off for autopsy. And that's how we get our answers a lot of times. If a case goes for autopsy, you're looking, instead of a 2 to 3 week period of getting a death certificate, now you're looking at least 45 days, because they have to do the autopsy, and then the medical examiner fills out their part, and then we eventually get it. A classic example would be, most of the time we have those back in 45 days. Kentucky is really good, and they have great MEs, our medical examiners, that work tirelessly to make sure they take care of everything. In Kentucky, you're talking almost 10,000 deaths a year. And a normal medical examiner's office will autopsy probably over 2,000 of those in a year. That's a lot. And for them to fill out the paperwork and get it back to us in a timely manner compared to other states is pretty cool.
Especially with Kentucky, because Kentucky works in like a regional office instead of having a medical examiner in each county, or having that extra resource that you can just take them to right here. We're driving to Frankfort, to Louisville, to actually get that autopsy done. So how do you think that affects the process?
With us, we have a good system, because in our office and other offices do the same thing. Some offices will take the decedent to Frankfort. For us, that's an hour and a half's trip at least. So we go there one way is an hour and a half, and what we do is leave early in the morning. The death occurs today. That death will come to our office. We will do everything that we need to do, and then it goes in our cooler, and it'll be there till in the morning. Early in the morning, it leaves and goes to Frankfort. Once it's there, they do the autopsy, and we bring it straight back. So Kentucky is very efficient when it comes to that. We used to have 4 medical examiners' offices. That got cut down to 2. Right now, there's still 2. There's one in Louisville, one in Frankfort, and in turn, they're building one in northern Kentucky, which is going to take a big stress off them. But the problem is, medical examiners are highly educated, and these are forensic medical examiners. You know yourself, that's one of the things that you wanted to do.
Well, that's what I wanted to start as, and then, whoo.
And then you fell in love with the office,
and then
right?
I loved it here. I loved getting to interact with the family, so here I stayed.
There you go.
With that, interagency, collaboration, communication, everything is so important in this line of work. So how do you maintain that on the scene, to autopsies within the office?
We work very well, I think, with law enforcement, depending on where it's at and what jurisdiction it's in, is who we collaborate with. Usually that starts with a regular field officer, and then that may lead into a detective. But whoever we work with, we have a point of contact. And we take, say it's an accident, car accident. We take pictures, they take pictures, we collaborate everything that we have together, and we share information. They can't pull, say, a CASPER report. We pull a CASPER report on every single death that we have. And what a CASPER report does is it looks, and you can make it for as long as you want. We usually go back a year. And it tells us any of the narcotics that somebody has. So it gives us a list of those narcotics. Not only does it for Kentucky, but still, that's another tool that we use to help us along. We can, in turn, share that information with law enforcement. Overdoses, which take about 25% of our caseload. With an overdose, one of the first things we want, or law enforcement wants, is a phone, because a phone tells us a whole lot, and that phone is in turn taken as evidence, usually by law enforcement, to where they can in turn get it to forensics to see maybe where they bought the drugs. They can see who sold it to them. They can see who else are maybe on their friends list, who is dealing with those drugs. Things like that become very important to us when we try to help prosecute a case.
So with that, being a law enforcement agency also, you can collect evidence. So how do you determine if you collect it or the police department that's on that scene collects it?
One of the big things, if it's a phone or something like that, they have more expertise than we do.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a weapon, a lot of times we have them take the weapon just for the simple fact we're such a small office that we don't want to get in the habit of finding storage for those. We do have an evidence room, and the evidence room's usually full with personal property instead of quote evidence.
Mm-hmm.
But say it's a suicide and it's a hanging, and somebody has hung themselves, we want the whatever they use to hang themselves with, whether that be a belt, a rope, or anything like that, because we will use that. We measure that out. We measure to make sure that they could get up there to even do that. We look at the knot, the way it's tied, different things like that, that on somebody that's not trained will know that. You got to, with a coroner, the whole object is they are trained and they are made to investigate nothing but death.
Specifically
death.
Yeah.
And you've seen this several times probably, and what ends up happening is a lot of times is a detective or a police officer is trained to investigate several things. We're trained to investigate nothing but death.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of times that we will see things that somebody else don't.
Mm-hmm. That's where the specialty comes into play.
It is like a specialty.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you have a doctor, and if that doctor specializes in orthopedics, then and you broke a leg or an arm or whatever you've broke, you're going to go to the orthopedist. You're not going to go to a regular doctor. It's the same thing with death investigation, and it's a huge myth out there that death investigators truly are specialists in their field, and in turn, they're the ones that's going to have to say, well, that body's been moved or the body hasn't been moved. And there's different ways that we look at all that we're going to talk in other episodes, exactly how we figure that out and how we look at those things.
Absolutely. And I think that's where you have such an advantage because of your experience with the fire side, with the EMS side. You have this array of knowledge from all these different services that can even help you more on the investigative side, where you can say the fire started there or this medical condition could have contributed to this.
Well, and a lot of people don't realize in Kentucky, anybody can run for coroner.
Yeah.
You don't have to have any type of experience. You don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be a nurse. You don't have to be anything. You can, and in some counties, it's a popularity contest, which makes it really bad when people really learn what the job consists of. Mm-hmm. My background goes back into 1985 when I became a firefighter. And from there, I became an EMT and then a paramedic, and I still carry a paramedic license. And in turn, those are my specialties. Mm-hmm. So you just got your EMT license. One of the big things is in our office, we really push medical because we may have 60% of our cases are true medical cases, and you have to know what makes the body tick. You got to you got to know the systems. You got to know everything about the body and anatomy, physiology, mm-hmm. and the processes of that. The neat thing about going to the hospital to work a hospital death, and we'll do these on other episodes, is we're able to get testing there that we can't get out in the field on a normal test. So that gives us more tools to rule on a death. So we look at every bit of that, but you got to know what to ask for. You got to know when to ask for it and when not to ask for it.
So you can use those as tools in the hospital like we do all the time, but you're going to scenes and you really don't know anything. So you're like, oh, do I talk to this person? Do I send them to autopsy? Can I be okay with just doing a postmortem myself at the office and rely on medical records? So kind of walk through that. How does your thought train work?
And that's big because from the time we get the call to we finish that call, it was an interesting statistic. And my wife, of course, Lacey's a math brain, mm-hmm. so hers is all statistics.
You want Excel, call Lacey Hammond.
So it's like, here you go. And so she figured up a normal case, not anything anything special, just a normal case, you're looking at 10 hours of investigation. By the time you look at it, get your pictures, everybody gets a post-mortem no matter what. Then, the interviews you have to do with the family, friends, who found them, all that comes into play. Any evidence around there that's going to give you clues. Our office, one of the things that we do as standard procedure is any medications that are labeled to the decedent. So any medications that they're taking that's labeled to them, we take possession of. That comes back to our office, and that medicine count is counted out, and we look for the regimen. So when they take it, we look for when it was prescribed. We look for how much was prescribed, the dosage, who wrote it, and we also look for how much is left in the bottle. That tells us whether somebody has truly taken their medicine like they should, and that could be skewed. Mm-hmm. You know that by counting a lot of, we count pills sometimes for an hour.
Yeah.
And in turn,
we hit like 3,000 one day.
Yeah, it's like unreal when you start counting a lot of pills. So it's like, the neat thing is all that goes on a sheet, and then we can look and say, okay, there's 120 in the bottle, and there was supposed to be 100. Why is that? Well, we go back and then we talk to the family. Well, because he had 5 left out of this one, or she had 5 left, we dump that into that bottle. But yeah, they take it every day. Somebody gets a 90-day supply that you don't think about, and you're trying to count for 30. So there's a lot of things that come into that play, but it gives us another tool to help determine whether they were compliant with their medicine or they weren't. And so that becomes big for us. So that becomes part of it. But a normal case, you're looking at 10 hours. Mm-hmm. And if you get other cases, it becomes a lot longer, such as finding next of kin. And next of kin is huge for us. And all across the United States, there's such homeless populations and mm-hmm. things like that plays a role into that. Or a lot of times since COVID even, people are shut in. They don't get out like they used to. They stay at home. People don't check on people anymore. And it's crazy that people will be in a house and be deceased for days and sometimes weeks before anybody decides, hey, we need to check on them. Mm-hmm. And, when I grew up, that didn't happen. Mm-hmm. Everybody knew everybody.
Well, and it's so much easier now with phones. Everybody's got a phone in their pocket. You can just call them. It's all right.
Yeah, call, check on them. You've got so much technology out there. Even somebody that's elderly, there's phones for the elderly that can do that. Mm-hmm. There's FaceTime. There's all kinds of stuff to people stay in contact with. And technology's great, but a lot of times we want that technology to look at it because it'll tell us the last time somebody texted out to somebody, and did they answer, didn't they answer? That becomes a huge thing when it comes to that. Mm-hmm. So all that becomes a big part of our investigation.
Yeah. And I think next of kin, differs so much in Kentucky, too, from other states across the U.S. and everything, with how the rules actually work and who is actually next of kin and how power of attorney is gone at death. So talk a little bit about that and how you have to deal with it.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that we come into a house and somebody says that I'm the power of attorney. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't realize that stopped at death. You were their power of attorney until they died. Now then it goes back to if they have a husband or wife, if they have a mother and father. The husband or wife trumps the mother and father. We deal with a lot of upset families because they want to make those decisions and the husband or wife wants to make a different decision. Then it drops on down, to adult children and things like that. Kids that are 14, 15, 16 years old and you have a divorce. Mm-hmm. Well, now that really the decisions that are made by the mother and father now, instead of by the kids or the ex-wife, because they're out of the picture and the kids are not 18 yet. Mm-hmm. It's just trying to find family, because there's a lot of times that we get that of, I haven't talked to him or her for 10 years. I haven't talked to him for 15 years. They've got so until that happens, what ends up happening with any of our cases is we have to keep them at the morgue until we reach the next of kin. Once that's done, they can turn it over to whoever they want, but they can also take it and tell us what funeral home that person needs to go to. So it becomes a big problem sometimes when it comes to getting somebody moved out of our morgue to a funeral home.
And I think with the marriage too that we see all the time, so many people are legally separated now, but haven't actually signed divorce papers. So how do you go about dealing with that?
That's huge,
Yeah.
because we run into that all the time. We've run into cases to where somebody's been separated for 10 and 20 years. Well, then and they went on with their life, but they've never bothered getting divorced. So we have to track that down. So we're constantly going, okay, somebody has to know this person, and we start from there and kind of put that together. Another resource that we have is Kentucky State Police has analysts. And these analysts, we can call and say, hey, we need this information if you can help us. And they are absolutely godsends when it comes to that a lot of times, because they start tracking down families. We found families in everywhere. When you're looking at, we found families in Wyoming, Oklahoma, Ohio, all these places that totally are different, that you would never think of by putting people, if nothing else, we put people on Facebook.
As a last resort.
Our Facebook page has over 30,000 followers. It's huge when it goes out. Genealogists, people that deal with genealogy, they are all over it a lot of times when it comes to us putting that up. And we do it as a last resort because everybody wants to help. And it's great because we have found relatives that will give us clues, and it's like just following that little breadcrumb till you finally find where you need to go.
So I think I want to kind of veer away from that and go into the prosecution aspect you mentioned at the very get-go. How does that work from your office and your point of view with the interagencies, law enforcement, all this stuff, and using your report to go to court with?
Our report is like gold a lot of times. So a normal court case is you're looking sometimes 4 and 5 years out. So what we have to do is we will take that, and when we type up a report, if I die tomorrow, somebody should be able to pick that report up 5 years from now and say, oh, this is what happened, this is where we found the body, this is what it looked like, and these are our final results. The neat thing about us is we went to a cloud-based system for reporting back in 2000, probably 12. And that system is what we use, and I can pull up a report from anywhere. So all the information gets loaded up to the case file, and I can pull toxicology, I can pull a death certificate, I can pull medical records. And so when a family calls me at 8 o'clock at night, I can still be able to pull that up and look at it. But we want our case files. We have different forms for everything. We got forms for everything that we do, from collecting personal property to evidence to next of kin. We have a form that is just an office communications form. So the office manager knows when she comes to work exactly what that case consists of, if there's blood to go out for toxicology, if she needs to pull medical records, anything that has to happen with that case, she already knows what to do with that, and that gives her the information to make sure it flows smoothly. If the case is going to get prosecuted, then the prosecuting, in Kentucky it's a Commonwealth attorney, will take that case, and usually we can participate in a grand jury, but usually we don't. Usually they have our information. And the police, whoever worked that with us on law enforcement, they will go to the grand jury, present the case. Once that's presented, then we go to trial. And they will come in and prep us for trial, to where we go in and have to testify to what all we did. Like I have to testify to the cause and manner. I have to testify to if what I signed the death certificate as. All that is on me. So if I mess that up, I could easily cause somebody to walk free. So we take that very serious and go through those and stay very objective. And we teach, and when I write stuff down, I teach everybody to write nothing but the facts. So if you have all the facts and the evidence, it will lead you to why somebody died. You just have to follow that and never assume anything. I always say that just because somebody has done something bad, or somebody thinks they're bad, or just because somebody's on drugs doesn't mean that's what killed them. It may have contributed to their death a little bit, but you have to work an investigation, whether from the richest to the poorest, the exact same way, and everybody deserves that. And that's the big thing to remember about death investigation. Everybody gets the same investigation, period.
I think that's super important. And I think another big question with that is the justification that you can bring to families and kind of clearing their minds at such a grieving time. How do you deal with families in their worst time?
That's probably one of the hardest jobs is to give families answers. We live in a society that is a now society. Sometimes we can give you answers now, why somebody died or why we think somebody died. But I want to be 100% sure, and I always tell families, hey, it could be this or it could be this. It could be a medical case. It could be an overdose. It could be a couple of things, and I got to get all the information before I can truly say why somebody died. And so I'm not going to tell you the exact answer now. Give me a day. Give me a week. Give me till everything gets back, because what you don't want to do is give families false hopes. You have to be truthful with them, and you have to make sure that they understand it's an investigation like anything else.
And back to the death certificate side, you may say something right here on that day and then get all the evidence back that you need, sign that death certificate out as something completely different.
And we've heard that. I mean, we've heard horror stories of where that's happened in other offices, at other places, and we don't want to be, I don't want that to happen. As an investigator, I want to make sure once I give my final answer, I have something to back that up, and I have the evidence to back that up of why. Here's the facts, and you may not like it, but this is why somebody died. Or this is why they died, and I can give that to you pretty quick if I've got everything I need.
Okay, so back to the funeral home aspect. These TV shows depicted as you come on there, you say, yep, they're dead, funeral home comes, and then that's it. So how do you actually work with the funeral home?
It's interesting because used to, a long time ago, if you picked up the phone, if somebody died in your family, most of the time somebody would say, takes it to XYZ funeral home. And people planned. People had life insurance. People had all the stuff that they would normally have through life. Insurance people came to your house every month and collected your insurance payment and all this other stuff. It's not like that anymore. Reality is probably 95% of our cases, people cannot tell us what funeral home they want to use. So in turn, it helps us to be able to take that decedent back to our place, do our testing, and look over the body like we need to. Then we'll call the family again. Hey, have you made a choice? You don't have to make it tonight. You never want to rush a family. At the time of that investigation, that's the most important thing you're doing. So you don't rush, and you go through, and everything's good. And then, in turn, after you do all that, then the family, if they can tell you what funeral home to release to, that's great. If they can't, then you keep the decedent until that time comes. Once that happens, we call the funeral home as soon as we can, and we let them know what's going on. Hey, it's not going for an autopsy. It'll be released in an hour. It may be released the next day, but they know a certain timeline. And then the funeral home works with us to get that decedent released to their custody.
So that's another one of those agencies you have to stay in communication with.
Yes.
One other thing I want to touch on is the funeral homes in the coroner business actually in Kentucky. And I don't know if this is like nationwide because of different laws and stuff that are with like different states, but in Kentucky it was huge that funeral homes were also the coroners. And
that's correct. I mean, for years and years and years, funeral homes handled the coroner's job. And in Kentucky, when I got into it, it was about a 75-25 split. That has slowly turned the other way to where now it's like a 50-50 split. And counties are having to be responsible for providing coroner's offices that they never had to do before, providing transportation to get the decedent to autopsy or just from the scene. I've had people say, well, why does it take more than one person to move a body? And my answer is, have you ever moved a body? And, it's hard. People don't die beside a door to where you can slide in and get. A lot of times, we always have EMS staying to help us lift. We have fire departments that come out when we need extra hands. There's a lot of things that go into that. And the funeral homes are in smaller counties, especially, are still there, and they're doing the corner work, and they do great work. But it's truly an investigative office, and it's went to that now compared to the way it used to be several years ago.
Okay, my last question before we have our closing thoughts are there any specific businesses or agencies that you work with in this field that really help families, help you, anything like that?
We work with a lot of cleanup agencies, and when I say cleanup, they've got involved into bio cleanups. A lot of people that are found deceased in houses, people need somebody to come in and clean that up so the house is safe and different things like that. So we deal with a lot of companies like that. That's getting more and more. Funeral homes, I think, are huge in who we deal with, and funeral homes, especially in our area, are great to work with. They will help us any way they can. So we look at those two companies as the huge things that we deal with on a daily basis.
So we had one sponsor already from SCU Scene Cleanup that has chosen to sponsor this podcast and help us out a little bit. So if any of these other agencies that deal with death investigation or the environmental services, things like that, if you want to reach out and get a commercial on the podcast just to get your name out, we would greatly appreciate it.
We're looking for those at all times to keep this going. This is our first one. And the cool thing is we want to build on this every week. So we're going to be dropping podcasts weekly. We're going to try to drop 3 right off the bat. And with those, we're going to build on a subject. We're not going to talk about this podcast. Everybody thinks we're going to talk about different scenes or different, say, cases that we worked. And that's not true. We want people that are curious. That's what we want. We want the public to jump in there and throw questions at us that we can take back weekly and put on the podcast and answer those for you all, to answer your curiosity. Death is always the biggest unknown, and people are always really fascinated by the unknown. So that's why we're doing this. So please support it, get it out there. We're going to be on all podcast platforms, and we're on all social media platforms, and Bailey's going to talk about that a lot.
Absolutely. The more you guys can follow and share our pages out on social media, the more it helps us and the more we can give to you all. So make sure that you're following us and sharing our content out on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Get the word out and continue helping us grow.
And we started the pages when? 2 nights ago?
2 nights ago.
Yeah. 2 nights ago, and what's our followers?
Within 24 hours, we had, I think, almost 400 on Facebook and TikTok, and now we're breaching 600 on TikTok and 500 on Facebook almost. So it's growing every day, and we really thank you guys for all of your support and engagement, and can only hope for more.
TikTok was pretty cool because we had over, 10,000 views? 10,000 views, and you know, we could not have done this, and we can't continue doing this without the help of Tri-State Media Services. That's who really got us involved in this. I've always wanted to do a podcast, but this is pretty cool because they've helped us along, showed us what we need to do, and hopefully we're going to continue this by getting some sponsors and keeping it rolling.